So, we've all heard this, right? That to really understand your dreams, you've got to write them down by hand with a pen. But what if that's not the whole story? Today, we're going to dig into that big debate, pen or keyboard. Okay, let's just jump right in. There's this super common idea that to connect with your dreams, to really get at what's going on in your unconscious, you have to use a pen and paper. I mean, tons of dream communities and practitioners absolutely swear by it. But what does the evidence actually say? All right, so this idea, let's call it the handwriting hypothesis, is built on a few claims that, they just feel right. Let's break down what people think is happening when that pen hits the paper. The argument basically goes like this. The very specific, kind of complex muscle movements of writing create this special connection between your body and your unconscious mind. It's a link that supposedly the simple, repetitive tap of typing just can't create. So the claim isn't just that it's different. The claim is that it's better. But, and this is a big but, when we actually start looking at the science people use to back this up, the whole story gets a lot more complicated. Let's see if the data really holds up. So a lot of the hype around this comes from a really famous 2014 study by Mueller and Oppenheimer. It found that students remembered lectures better when they took notes by hand instead of on a laptop. And wow, this study was everywhere. It was a huge media sensation. And when you look at the results from that original study, they were pretty darn compelling. It showed a clear, measurable win for handwriting when it came to remembering complicated stuff. It really seemed like the smoking gun everyone was looking for. Here's the thing about science, though. One study, no matter how cool, isn't enough. The real test, the gold standard, is whether other scientists can get the same results when they run the experiment again. And, well, here's the problem. A massive analysis in 2021 looked at 8 similar studies all put together, and it found the overall effect was negatives 0.008, which, statistically speaking, is 0. It's nothing. That original, exciting finding, it just vanished. And what's really fascinating is that other studies that get passed around have the same kinds of problems. Like, there's one showing that handwriting helps little kids learn their letters, which is great, but that tells us basically nothing about us as adults writing in a dream journal. And then there's a recent brain scan study that claimed handwriting created more brain connectivity. But get this, they had people type with only one finger. I mean, come on, who types like that? It's a totally weird setup that probably messed up the results. A lot of this boils down to a fundamental mistake in logic, a little something called the reverse inference fallacy. See, just because your brain lights up differently on a scan when you write versus when you type, you can't just leap to the conclusion that one is deeper or better. Our brain regions do all sorts of things. It's kind of like seeing your oven light is on and yelling, "Aha, someone's baking a cake," when, they could just be making a frozen pizza. Okay, so if the science is shaky, let's switch gears and look at history. Because this whole handwriting thing, it isn't just about brain scans. It's totally wrapped up in our idea of what a writer is even supposed to be. You know the image, right? This romantic picture, thanks to poets like Wordsworth, of the lonely genius sitting in a room, pouring their soul directly onto the page with a pen. It's a powerful idea. But actual history tells a completely different story. For hundreds and hundreds of years, some of the greatest works of Western literature weren't handwritten by their authors at all. They were dictated. Cicero had a scribe. The theologian Origen had a whole team of 7 scribes working in shifts, like an assembly line. A blind John Milton dictated Paradise Lost. Dostoevsky dictated The Gambler in just 26 days to a stenographer to pay off his debts. So what does this all mean? It means our whole idea of the lonely writer is actually a pretty new invention. It's a myth that really got going with things like copyright law and the Romantic movement, and it completely hides this long, rich history of creation as a spoken, collaborative act. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. A lot of people who are into dream journaling today look to ancient dream practices for inspiration. But the way it was actually done back then, well, it's probably not what you'd expect. Let's take a look at a place like Epidaurus, one of the ancient Greek healing temples. The whole process was completely communal and spoken. You didn't go off to a private room with a journal, nope. You did purification rituals with other people, you slept in a big hall with dozens of other dreamers, and when you woke up, the crucial step was to tell your dream to a priest, who would then help you figure out what it meant. And that is just a night and day difference, isn't it?
The ancient wisdom that so many of us are trying to tap into wasn't about writing alone for your own private thoughts. It was all about sharing. The magic was in the telling, in the conversation with someone else, inside a community.
Okay, so all of this brings us to the final and maybe the most important point in our whole investigation. Where does all this leave us? We started this journey with a really simple question. Which tool is better for getting in touch with our inner world, pen or keyboard? But everything we've looked at, from the neuroscience to the history of great literature to ancient dream practices, it all kind of suggests we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. Maybe the real difference isn't about the tool in your hand at all. So let's just recap. The neuroscience, it shows our brains do different things, sure, but it can't prove one is better. History, it shows us that a lot of masterpieces were spoken, not written, into existence. And ancient wisdom, it points us toward talking, relationships, and community, not private journaling. So maybe, just maybe, the real power isn't in the tool we use to record the dream. Maybe it's in the connection we make when we share that dream with another person. What if the most important act isn't writing it down, but speaking it out loud to someone who's really listening? What if the best way to understand our dreams isn't alone at all, but together?